Hello, Matt the Lesser, back again with another episode of our Fan Factions Terra Mystica Basic Strategy Series. For those who haven't seen one of these videos before, we are going through the brand new Fan Factions one by one and talking about how to play them, when to play them, how to have fun with them, and some basic strategy for all 14 of these new factions that are in the process of being finalized, beta tested, and released as an expansion for our favorite game, Terra Mystica. Just a reminder, these videos are intended at people who have a basic familiarity with the game of Terra Mystica. You've probably played a few games, at least know the base factions and the rules, and are looking to play the fan factions for the first time, whether you're looking to jump into a game on Board Game Arena where they are already out and playable, or whether it's a little bit in the future of when I'm recording this and you have the actual components and you're sitting down to play it for the first time. This is episode number 2. In episode number 1, we covered the Conspirators, one of the most straightforward of the fan factions. So today, we're going to make it a little more complicated and talk about the Architects. The Architects are one of my favorite of the fan factions, and they're not the most complicated. Just wait, we've got some crazy stuff coming. But they are definitely a little bit more nuanced. There's a little bit more stuff to play with than the Conspirators relative to some of the more basic fan factions. So as a reminder, I don't do video editing, so this is the no frills, one take version, basic strategy Architects. All right, let's go. Let's look at the Architects board. So first thing that jumps out to you, obviously, Architects are a red faction building on those wastelands. Now, why do Architects live in the wastelands? I'm not so sure. I think it's maybe there's a lot of stone in the wastelands. In fact, we're going to go back for half a second. I love in this artwork the stone mountains on either side of this riverway, and you watch the Architects are building a bridge across. That's because the Architects are all about bridges. All right, so back to the board. So for the most part, a pretty basic, standard, straightforward board. Normal production on pretty much everything. Normal workers, normal TP production, coins and power, normal priests, sanctuary stronghold. It's a 4-power stronghold, so that's nice. That's a bit of a good production. They also have normal shipping, normal digging, 2 starting cult steps, 1 on fire, 1 on air, normal starting resources. So all of that is familiar, right? For those of you who have played a lot of Terra Mystica. They are a 3/9 faction, so like the halflings, mermaids, swarmlings, for example, in the base game where they start with 3 power in Bowl 1 and 9 power in Bowl 2, which gives them a leg up at the beginning of the game. They can instantly take any of the power actions except for the double dig, and if they take a 3-power bonus tile, have immediate access to double dig. So as we'll see, whether or not you go for double dig in round 1 is actually one of the big early decision points with the Architects, but they have the ability to do so, which a lot of the fan factions do not. Okay, now, what is special about the Architects? As I said, the Architects are all about bridges. And unlike the Engineers, who, in the base game have like one little nifty sort of side scoring thing to do with bridges, Architects' bridges are core, very central to their game. So let's look at their basic abilities, and they have 3 of them that are all related to bridges, and they all work together really well. So the first one, over here on the right, maybe the most important, is if the Architects are building a structure across a bridge, so they have a structure, they have a bridge next to the structure, and they want to build on the hex that's on the other side of the bridge, they can transform it for 1 fewer spade. So for example, if that hex is red or yellow, they can build on it for free. Basically say, I'm going to build and make it red and do that at no spade cost whatsoever. And if it's 2 spades away normally, they only have to pay 1 spade. So the Architects are therefore a faction that, in effect, generate a lot of their own spades, which is an extremely powerful thing in Terra Mystica, as spades are hard to come by and you need them to find places to build. Second, the Architects, because bridges are so important, the designers wanted to give them an extra way to build bridges relative to a normal faction. So of course they can take the bridge power action just like anybody else, but they can also, as an action, spend a priest to place a bridge. And this is something that will come in handy quite often for the architects who want to get bridges down early and often. And then finally, and this is a really cool one, architects' bridges count as a power toward figuring out if you have enough structures and power in a town or in a cluster of buildings to form a town. So they don't count as a structure. So you still need your normal 4 structures or 3 if you have a sanctuary, but that bridge counts as a power value. So it basically allows you to form towns earlier and potentially form more towns than you would otherwise. So as an example, if you have a set of structures that are all connected that have 2 TPs, 2 dwellings, and a bridge, normally that's 4 structures, but only 6 power value, and so that's not a town unless you have fire 2. But the architects, because that bridge counts as an additional one, gets you to 7 power value, bam, that's a town. And this is a really, really important piece of the architect's strategy and ability. And so all of these bridge things go together, right? Get a priest, put it down, place a bridge, build across that bridge, get new structures, build enough, and bam, you got a town. And it all kind of goes together. So that's what the architects are all about. Now, one thing to think about here is that often stranding bridges is a dangerous, risky game to play in Terra Mystica, right? Most of us have probably, if you've played a lot of games, been in that unfortunate scenario where you don't have shipping or you're worried about the bridge action being contested. So you put that bridge down adjacent to your one structure in the hope that then you can use that to build across and build it. And someone comes in and builds on that hex and your bridge is then just sitting there completely useless. Well, for the architects, it's not necessarily useless. I mean, obviously you'd prefer to be able to build on that hex and use that spade advantage, but first of all, still counts as 1 power value toward a town. So if you can build out other structures, you can still leverage that to build a town, even if there's not a structure on the other side of your own. Or this is where the architect's stronghold comes in. So architect's stronghold is a niche building. You will not necessarily build it every single game, but you will build it many games because it actually provides, 1, a path out of some sticky situations like that, 2, access to potentially more spades, and 3, gives you some victory points. So what does it do? It gives you a button, and once per round, you can place that button as an action to move a bridge. Yes, most things in Terra Mystica do not move. Most factions, when they place a bridge, it's stuck there. No, not for the architects. They can uproot that bridge and move it anywhere else on the board. It doesn't have to be connected. It can be on the entire other side of the map. You just have to move it and put it next to one of your structures in a valid bridge location. The only restriction on this, which is what this little exclamation mark icon is right here, is that you cannot break apart a town. So if you want to move a bridge, the set of structures that you leave, and there's a town, it's part of a town, the set of structures that you leave behind with the town tile has to still be a valid town. So we'll talk about this later, but this means you need to be a little bit more careful about where you build your town tiles. Also sometimes it results in intentionally overbuilding towns to free up the ability to move that bridge. But more broadly, let's think about what this enables and what this means, right? So this says, for example, you have a dwelling, you put a bridge next to that dwelling, you go across that bridge, maybe that hex across is yellow, so you can build a free dwelling, and then bam, so that's one spade saved, right? Then bam, you hit the button, you move the bridge over adjacent to a different dwelling, and maybe there's a gray hex across from that dwelling, and you can also build on that one for free. So the stronghold allows you to potentially, if you can find enough spots to move these bridges around, generate a lot of spades. And you can, when we look at the map, we'll talk about some spots where you can potentially link some of these things together and really do some cool things with the architect's stronghold. Now, the reason it's a situational building is that there's only so many spots you're going to be able to move the dwellings, and it's also a big investment early in the game. So sometimes just placing the bridges normally, or even placing a new bridge, might actually be cheaper and more efficient than raising up a stronghold just so you can move a bridge. But especially late in the game, with 3 victory points for every time that you hit that button and move the bridge, can be really powerful to be built in round 4, 5, maybe 6. And there are games where you can also build it in round 1 and really go crazy. So we'll talk about all that in a little bit. But first, now that we know the board, let's talk about when do we want to play this red faction, the Architects. So you'll see the first thing is highlighted a couple colors, just like almost every faction in Terra Mystica. I'm going to say this in almost every video. The color wheel matters. Having neighbors is bad. Having people on the far side of the color wheel is good because they're not going to take your hexes. So obviously that's yellow and gray being bad for the Architects, and blue and black being good. In particular, on base map, I've found that yellow is particularly harmful for really all red factions, and that includes the Architects. And blue is particularly nice because they give you more neighbors than black does. So maybe those are the particular ones to look out for. Unfortunately, blue and yellow are also very nice to each other. So sometimes if you get blue, someone's likely to pick yellow, and then that's not so nice for you picking a red faction. But if you can get a game with no yellow and blue, that's excellent. Talking about the bonus tiles. So the 4 that I've highlighted here on the good side to be in the game for the Architects are Dwelling Scoring, Worker Power, the Priest, and the 6 coin tile. And let's go through these as to why, because it'll start illuminating a little bit of Architects' strategy. So the Dwelling tile is good because with those bridges and the ability to basically get a lot of spades pretty quickly in the game and in a way that is not very much contested by other players, Architects have the ability to put out a lot of dwellings early in the game. And once you get a lot of dwellings out, having the dwelling tile around puts a little extra coins in the game, and more importantly, a bunch of points potential for you as the Architects. So that is just a good tile to have in the game. Worker Power is also a good tile for the Architects, and this goes with particularly the fact that they are a 3/9 faction. So if the Architects Worker Power is in the game and they get Worker Power, they have the ability to take Double Dig with their first action, which is often a very strong thing to do for any faction in Terra Mystica, and that includes the Architects. Third is the Priest, and this is primarily because remember the Architect's ability to use a Priest to place a bridge. So for example, in round 1, if you take this Priest, insta-bridge. You just have to place it down. Or anytime later in the game, you can use a Priest to take a bridge, so there's really no shortage of Priest uses for the Architects, who also still need it to upgrade shipping, which they'll eventually want to do by the end of the game to connect, and potentially if they want to try to compete a little bit on the cults. So really, lots of Priests are good for the Architects. And then finally, the 6 coin tile, good for most factions, but the Architects, as a faction that likes to put out a lot of dwellings early, will usually generate a lot of worker income, and 6 coins can help balance that out with coin income. Conversely, Architects don't love to have a bunch of TPs sitting around on the board all the game because they're usually focused on the dwellings first. And so that's why the TP scoring tile is slightly less good for them. I wouldn't even say, even bad is probably too strong of a categorization, but maybe a tile that other factions are going to take advantage of a little bit more than you. The spade tile is in the bad section because Architects with this bridge ability generate a lot of spades, and they often can get Double Dig early in the game also. So the spade tile, other factions are just going to use it more than them, and particularly after the first couple rounds, the Architects may be like, I don't need a spade. We're going to look at the map in a second and show that you can potentially play an Architects game with very, very few actual spades, especially if you build the Stronghold, in which case this spade tile really becomes sort of redundant and other factions are going to use it to their advantage. And then finally, ship scoring. Not that as good for the Architects as many other factions, because the Architects don't usually advance their shipping until late in the game because they can often just use the bridges to get across the water, and they also want to use those Priests for bridges or for cults, and so they're not going to have 3 shipping by round 3 in the way that like Mermaids or Chaos Magicians or somebody might, who could better take advantage of that tile. So those are the bonus tiles. And then finally, thinking about the round scoring. So some of this I've already alluded to, but on the good side, early dwelling scoring, good for the Architects because they can pretty easily get out a lot of dwellings early in the game. The other thing that's nice early in the game for the Architects is town scoring. Architects are actually one of the few factions that can reliably get a town in round 1, and we will talk in just a second about how you do that when we get to the openings. They also can, just because they hit in round 1 means they also count in round 2, which is even quite difficult for a lot of other factions. So these early town scorings that can really jumpstart the Architects' game and economy snowball are really, really good for them, especially since they're going to score them and likely most other factions won't. I actually think round 2 is the sweet spot, because the one thing with round 1 is that even if they take the 2 key town, they may not be able to take advantage of this spade since they don't start with any steps on brown. They'd have to like get the town and an additional priest, and you might have used that priest as a bridge. So I actually think round 2 is probably the sweet spot where you'll probably be able to hit that town. Maybe one of your opponents will, maybe none of them will, and then you can also potentially take that 2 key town, which is always my go-to town, especially if I'm taking it in the first couple rounds, and then still get that spade cult bonus. Also on the good side, I have the big building tile in round 4 or round 5. This is going back to what I was saying about the Stronghold. I find that that's often a good point in the game to build a Stronghold if you want to, especially if you can score it. Say you build it in round 4, you're going to get 3 bridge movements out of that, so that's 9 points in addition to the 5 that you're scoring for building it in the scoring round. And then additionally, that's about the time of the game where maybe you've put out all your bridges, maybe a couple of your bridges are locked up in towns, and so you want to be able to move the remaining ones around and generate yourself some more spades at that point of the game, and so that's often a sweet spot time to build the Stronghold. And then finally, I also threw the town icon on round 4 because a lot of factions can do this, but by the time round 4 rolls around, the Architects, especially if you haven't found an early town, you can probably pretty reliably hit 2 towns in even a round 4 town round, which also is just a nice boost to the economy. On the bad side, TP scoring in round 1, and in particular, I chose this TP scoring with the water cult reward because this is a cult reward that the Architects will basically never hit. And TP is pretty, like, everyone can kind of take advantage of TP, but you might get some factions like Engineers or Fakirs that want to open double temple, or we talked about the Conspirators yesterday in the previous video who want to potentially open Stronghold Temple. So they're going to be building multiple TPs. Nomads might go for like a crazy 3 TP opening, whereas the Architects are, maybe they build 2 TPs if they want to form a town, but most likely they're building no more than 1 TP, and I just think other factions take better advantage of that. Round 4 digging is something we're going to see a lot here, where if you're not a digging faction, round 4 digging is bad for you because it's just better for other factions. So Architects are not a faction that's frequently going to advance their digging because they generate so many spades already through their bridges. So that spade event is just not very helpful. And then finally, I also threw in here towns and dwellings very late in the game, particularly round 6, are less good for Architects than they are for other factions. The towns particularly, because you often want to found your towns early in the game, kind of as you go along, taking advantage of those extra structure power that you're getting from your bridges. Whereas other factions are much better and much more suited to, lining up to hit 3 towns all in round 6. Whereas Architects, if you're waiting until round 6 to found all your towns, you've probably sacrificed a lot of economy, and it's just not as good a game plan. And similarly with the dwellings, by the time you get to round 6, you've probably got a lot of dwellings out already, and other factions are just going to hit that round much harder than you are. So this sort of an overview of when to play the Architects. I think they are reasonably flexible in terms of when you can build stuff. Like, things that are good for every faction are good for them. Round 5 TP scoring, like things like that. But I think the early towns and dwellings is particularly the thing that if I see that really jumps out at me as, ooh, this could be a good Architects game. Now, here's the fun part. Let's talk about the map. So we're going to focus on base map today, and Architects are one of the most map-dependent factions out there because where they have the ability to build these bridges for free spades is really going to vary by how the map is laid out. And so we're just going to focus on base map today. Maybe at some point in the future I'll do a follow-up on the other maps. But obviously, I've noted a bunch of starting spots as well as some classic bridge spots on here, but let's start with the starting spot. So I put a star on D4 because I think in almost every game you want to start there. It's central, it gives good access, it has a bridge to a 1 spade, aka 0 spades for the Architects spot right away from it, and also is just going to get a lot of leech, as this central area is the most common starting area on base map. And then I highlighted 3 spots as secondary starting spots. And like my suggestion, if you're playing the Architects and you're in like seat 1 or 2, put your first dwelling on D4 and then wait and see what the other people do. And then you can choose which of these other 3 spots is best dependent on who's in the game and where they've placed. So advantages and disadvantages of each one. D6 is a really cool spot that most other red factions wouldn't think to start on, but for the Architects, it's actually quite nice because it's got 2 bridge to free dig spots away, directly away from it. And so, for example, if you start on D6, you build this bridge here, you can build on C5 with no additional spades, just build your dwelling, and then you can build on D7. Whereas if you start on D7, you can't get C5 transformed for free until you get around to like you'd have to go temp shift to D6 and then go back this way. Or you'd have to actually spend a spade to do a normal dig, which obviously is not as good. So D6, the downside is not very much leech. Unless you have green in the game, you're not going to get as much leech as these other couple spots. But those free spades are really valuable. The reason to start on D7 is usually that you're worried you will lose D7 before it gets to you. Particularly if gray is in the game and they are on C5, or maybe you have dwarves on F6, or if for whatever reason you're worried about D7, you might go ahead and start there. Or if you really need the leech, that would be the other reason. But again, I think going from D6 and getting over to D7 that way is probably the better way to grab D7, as long as you're planning on placing a bridge on this side of the map early in the game. And then finally is G2, which I think is often, for most red factions, not an optimal starting spot, but it has some advantages for the Architects, particularly, so you do have this bridge directly south of it, which you would still need 1 subsequent spade to build on I6, but the Architects can build, if they build a Sanctuary or a Stronghold here on G2, because the bridge counts as a power toward their town, they could actually build Sanctuary or Stronghold, bridge, and 3 dwellings and have that be a town, whereas normally, for most red factions, this becomes a pretty, like, inefficient town, but for the Architects it actually works okay. The other one that's probably even better is if there's no yellow in the game and you can beat brown to F3, this does require a normal spade, but if you go to F3, then you have a free bridge over to G1, and this is a nice central town that's going to get a ton of leech. Or in the rare game where you actually think you can connect through the middle, obviously that would be quite cool as well. So, and then let's talk about the bridge spots. So I've highlighted some of them already. Most of these are areas that are either one sort of a free dig away from a red hex or a free dig away from something that's a free dig away from the red hex, right? So you can link these things together, right? And this is the cool thing about the Architects. So like, for example, say you start on D4, you build a bridge to get to C2, you're on red. Now all of a sudden you can build another bridge to D3 and build here and also on E3, and you did all of that without having to spend a single spade. 4 hexes for a single spade, and those bridges count toward a town, right? If you did all of that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all you need is 1 TP upgrade and bam, you got a town. Similarly on this side, D6, right? Build to G5 for free. You can throw a dwelling on D7. You can build another one to B6. You can even build A12. And look, this is like a town. You don't even need a TP. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Town. So Architects have a lot of cool options when it comes to this. I've also highlighted this B6 to D8 one, which sometimes you want to form the town this way, or 2 bridges toward a town, as we just established, counts twice. So sometimes you'll just throw a bridge there for the town value, or sometimes if you want to dig D8, then once you're on B6 coming down here, this one becomes only 1 spade. So that's kind of the last bridge I've highlighted. There are obviously other spots where you could use bridges, C3 to B4 I've seen sometimes, but I think these are the primary ones where you can get to almost all of these hexes that I've outlined here without spending any actual spades if you just build your bridges from the right starting spots. So if I'm playing Architects, I would probably, my default will be D4, D6, unless I'm worried about D7 or I think I have opportunity for a town in the south from the Architects. But otherwise, I'm probably going D4, D6 and trying to get out bridges as early as possible in most games. Okay. Architects openings, and I apologize already. I know this one's going to go a little longer than half an hour, which was my original goal. But architects do have a lot of opening options because of the bridges. So I think they can open with any of these sort of temple plus 1 to 2 dwellings opening. You can do a dwelling rush. You can just build a town, which is combination usually of like a dwelling rush, maybe a couple TPs. Or you can open with a stronghold. And so let's talk about under what scenarios you might be interested in doing that. So temple and dwellings is the most flexible, can be done in a number of different ways. But if you get either of the power tiles, either worker power or temp ship, you are probably doing that with the intention of taking double dig, which the architects, as we already talked about, can do at the beginning of the game. And that's really good because it denies double dig from someone else and also allows you to potentially take a couple hexes that are not bridges, right? So like, for example, the classic one on base map is if you're on D4 and there's no gray in the game, spading E7 early is really valuable. This is just a really valuable hex, but it's a normal spade. You're not going to be able to convert E7 off a bridge regardless. And so taking that double dig early on to secure that hex can very much be worth it for the architects. You're also probably looking to do this in a round where there's temple or TP scoring, so you can at least take advantage of that. And again, you can do this by double spade, or you can also build a temple and then build your dwellings via building bridges. And you can build those bridges with priests, either from the tile or the priest action or the bridge action. And so you don't have to actually get any power action spades or the spade bonus tile to be able to open temple 2 dwellings with the architects, or even 3 dwellings if you get worker power. So lots of flexibility there. The dwelling rush, right? You can sort of dwelling rush just with bridges. You could easily build 3 or potentially even 4 dwellings in addition to your starting dwellings, just by building 2 bridges, right? So for example, we talked about this one already, but if you start on D6, bridge, dwelling, dwelling, bridge, dwelling, dwelling, that's 4 new dwellings in round 1, which in my mind counts as a dwelling rush. Maybe you build a TP and it's the TP plus 5 dwellings opening, which people could argue whether that's a true dwelling rush or not, but it's in that camp, right? The other option is if you take temp ship, you can do a true dwelling rush. And in particular, if you do start down on G2, you have access to that direct red, or you have the one in the north, and you can double dig, plus maybe you also build a bridge, and you can get down 7 dwellings, which is sort of the definition of a traditional dwelling rush. When would you want to do this? Obviously, dwelling scoring, or if there's the spade event and you want to double dig to take advantage of those spades. Again, also here, priests and the bridge action valuable for getting free spades from bridges that way. Towns. So as I said, architects are one of the few factions that can reliably open with a town. And this is a very obviously cool thing to do, especially if there is town scoring, obviously. The main way to do this is to build at least 1, if not 2 bridges. And these are I've listed down here the hex combinations of those towns that you can get in round 1. So D4 to E3 is starting on D4 and going west. You go north up to C2, south back down via another bridge to D3, and then you build on E3. So that does take 2 bridges. So you either need 2 priests or a priest and the bridge action, and then you'll upgrade to a TP as well, but that'll be enough for a town. You can do the all dwelling one, which is the one in the middle, D6 to C5, D7 becomes free then, B6 and A12, or you could do the first 4 of those and build a TP. Those are also 2 bridges needed, but ultimately results in a town. And then finally, there's the center one, D4. This one is the one where you do need a spade. So maybe the spade tile comes in handy here to dig that center E7 hex. Then you can, if you're also starting on D6, you can, instead of, most commonly you would place this bridge first, D6 to E5, but instead you could do this initial bridge, D6 to E8, and form a town right through here. This one will require 2 trading posts, but only 1 bridge. So those are the different towns that you have the option to form, and one of the coolest openings for the architects. And then finally is the Stronghold. The Stronghold is a bit different from the rest of the openings in that, as with many Stronghold openings, if you want to do anything besides the Stronghold, you need workers. And in particular for the architects, like, you really need those workers because the whole point of the Stronghold is to open up the ability to move a bridge. So if to really make a Stronghold opening worth it, you need to be able to place the Stronghold and place a bridge and place at least one dwelling, ideally 2 dwellings. So that means you need 2 extra workers and a bridge. So you can either do that with the Stronghold bonus tile and then taking a bridge either via a priest or a bridge action, or by the priest tile and then taking the worker action. You can also do worker power and take a priest or bridge action, but then you're only building 1 dwelling in addition to your Stronghold. Obviously, this is great if you have that Stronghold scoring tile or it's a Stronghold scoring event. For example, just to show on the map how this might be done, say you upgrade to your Stronghold on D4, which is probably the best candidate because this is where you're going to get the most leech. You could then, for example, build a bridge over here. You build on C2. Once you've built on C2, you hit that button, you move this bridge maybe over to here, and then you can build on C5. And so you've started Stronghold plus 3 dwellings. That's a pretty strong opening. You will still probably want to get a temple up sooner rather than later, for all the reasons that temples are good in Terra Mystica. But Stronghold openings, especially if you're scoring them, can be really good for the architects. Like, remember that if you're able to move a bridge successfully every round, that's 18 points over the course of the game, which is nothing to sneeze at. So that's the openings. And finally, let's wrap this video up by talking about, once we've opened, gotten through round 1, what are we thinking about as the game is going forward with the architects? So the number 1 bullet is the most important one here. You have to think about where you put your town tiles, especially if you're planning on building the Stronghold. For almost every other faction in Terra Mystica, where you put your town tile within the town is irrelevant. Mermaids obviously have to put it on the water if they're doing that, but otherwise, factions could not care less. And people have actually debated, where should you do it for the best aesthetics or to be kind to your opponent so they can see the town tile. Forget all that with architects because it actually matters. What you need to be thinking about is, if there's a bridge that's part of that town and I'm later, even if I can't do it right now because I don't have the Stronghold or I don't have enough in my town structure, I later might want to move that bridge. I need to make sure the town tile is in a place where I'm likely to have enough left for the remaining structures to still be a town. So for example, if you have a town that ends with like a bridge and a single dwelling off that, don't put the town tile on that dwelling, because that dwelling is then basically going to lock that bridge next to it. Put it on the other side where you might actually be able to build up more structures, and eventually you can pull that bridge. The dwelling will then become just a freestanding dwelling, and you can go put that bridge somewhere else. So this is a really important thing to think about with the architects. Another way that this works, by the way, is sort of the second bullet here, which is you can overbuild your towns to a point where when you remove a bridge, it actually creates a new town. So think about it this way. You form a town maybe in the middle where you've got enough structures to have the town, and then, but it's got, call it, maybe it has 2 bridges, right? And then off the far end of the town, you build out enough for there to be another town. You pull that bridge that's in the middle. The original set of structures has to still be enough to be a town for you to move the bridge, but then the new set, now that it's freed from the original set, actually becomes a new town, and it can form instantly or when you actually then build it up to be enough structure. So that's just another clever thing to keep in mind as the architects, that you can build up over the towns as long as you have a plan to later remove that bridge with the Stronghold power. Couple little lesser minor tricks with the architects. Bridges give you direct access, which means that they can give you a neighbor. So say, you don't have anywhere that you need to put the bridge to actually build a new structure with a free spade or a reduced spade. Throw that bridge somewhere that's got a dwelling of yours that doesn't have a neighbor, but across the river is one of your opponents. all of a sudden, one, you'll get leech if they upgrade that structure. And more importantly, you can then upgrade to a TP at the cheap direct TP cost and save yourself 3 coins. So that's a cool one. The other one is you can throw another bridge on the end of anything. It doesn't have to go anywhere as long as it's a valid place to put a bridge. But that 1 extra power could be the difference between you founding a town in that location, and the bridge counts even if it doesn't have anything on the other side. And then finally, the architects, particularly on base map, I've seen this happen where people sort of forget about connecting. And it's because to connect as architects on base map, unless you get that town through the center with that E7 gray hex, you are going to have to get shipping and use a normal spade somewhere in order to connect. So if we go back to the map, particularly if you start D4 and D6, you build up a bunch up here in the northeast, maybe you go west from D4, these are not connected. And so the most common hex to be able to do this is B4. So just make sure that you get your shipping, even though shipping is not important for the architects overall, make sure you just keep an eye on it and get it soon enough that you can secure either B4 or A7 or maybe C3 in order to connect before all of those hexes get snapped up and you get cut off from connecting. And the reason you want to connect is because architects, I have them rated as medium plus, but they're almost on the high end of ability to compete on network because they get so many spades and can get all of these structures out. Honestly, the only reason they're not even higher is because red is just a tricky color sometimes to find enough hexes. They have 2 hexes that are in the very corners of the map of their natural color, and so sometimes it's a little trickier for them to really get up to like 15, 16 level networks, but they can consistently, I would say, get to 14, for example, and that's often going to be quite competitive on network, but not if you don't connect. So make sure you do that. And then as far as the cults go, we haven't talked about them much for the architects, but they can do okay, right? They do usually want to start generating priests, so I would say if you don't build a temple in round 1, build one in round 2 and start generating priests. And so they can typically send some to the cults. They start on fire and air, so if you have one of those big building scoring events early in the game and can throw your priest to the 3 spot on that cult, you'll get some workers back, which is nice. But so, I wouldn't count on a ton of cult points from the architects, but maybe some. And in particular, the other thing that helps them is they do often with that early town take the 2 key town, which automatically makes them at least somewhat competitive on all the cults. So if they then sort of build off of that, they actually can have some quite successful cult games. So anyways, I hope this was all helpful and informative. I personally love playing the architects. I find moving bridges around, thinking about creative ways to form towns. Architects can have some of the funkiest looking towns that you've ever seen, which is really cool. And so I really hope you all enjoy playing them. I think from an overall power perspective, they're squarely in the middle, maybe a tiny little bit below average, but obviously so much is going to be dependent on the setup and the opponents. And if you find the right setup like we talked about and you play a strategy, I think you can have a lot of success with the architects. So let me know in the comments how your games with them go. Come find me on BGA, tell me, and good luck playing the architects, and we will be back with episode 3 soon. Bye for now.